Remove these two bolts, cap screws, or whatever you want to call them. Now that's seated in there pretty good. Again, if it didn't, I'd get my hammer and just give it a little tap. Make sure it's in there fully seated, because you don't want to strip one of these out. You're going to have a hard time getting it if it strips. So the other end of these screws, these cap screws, is actually in oil. So if you experience difficulty removing them, which I clearly am starting to already with this one, it's because there's corrosion here at the head, not because of the threads. So this one here, I have a hunch will come right out like they usually do. Yep. Nice and easy. Okay, now, let's see if it comes out. Nah, it broke. Let's see. Alright, these cap screws, when you install them, there's actually a nylite washer that goes on the shaft, or on the shoulder of the screw, and as you tighten it down, it crushes into this cavity and it makes a seal, which is why these bolts don't leak. So, back to what I was saying about this one. It's the corrosion here around the head that is making it difficult to remove this one. So we try to get as much as we can out with our pick. And sometimes, going back to the other method, we put our socket in there. We give it a few shots, not too hard, with the hammer. Sometimes that helps break it loose. Okay, there we go. And you can see the additional corrosion here that just came out when I cracked it loose. And there'll probably be more as I back it out. You may get some oil out of there. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I'm pouring my pot of oil into another container. Like I said, it's just a mess waiting to happen. So I try not to work around full pots of oil, or drain pans, or whatever you're using. Boy, you can see that was some sludge in there. You're going to get a look at it real soon here when we take this plate off of here. So, you know, try and pull the threaded part. There we go. Here's the nylite washer that I was talking about, stuck on the shaft, and you can see the corrosion on the head of this, and we're getting a little bit of drip. So now we go back to our hammer and screwdriver, or should I say we start with our hammer and screwdriver to remove this motor plate. Sometimes these are a bear to get off. This one here happens to be coming right off. You don't want to hit too hard on it. It's aluminum. It'll chip and damage as easily as that motor end plate, but with the motor end plate you have no choice. I've had these seized on here pretty good. This one here is coming right off. I'm going gentle. There's rust on this shaft, and that's why we're having a bit of a time getting this off right now. The more rust on the shaft, the harder it is to force the seal that's pressed into this motor mounting plate over the rust to get it off. So I'm just going easy because, like most parts of this unit, all cast aluminum. Cast aluminum isn't exactly one of the strongest metals out there. So now, here we go, the unveiling. Now we pulled the drain plug. Look at the sludge inside of this. Just look at this. Look at these globs. Just globs and globs of sludge. Pulling the drain plug, we'd never get these out. We have to fill this unit up with flush, shake it all around, let it sit. Sometimes this stuff doesn't like to dissolve, depending on exactly what it is. Sometimes it's actually a fungus of sorts, similar to what grows in diesel fuel. So here's our actual pump, and you can see that this shaft is rusted up pretty good. Quite a bit of rust on this shaft. All right, I don't know how well this is going to help, but you can see it's pretty gummed up in there. See if I can pull some of this gunk out. Alright, so we're going to go back to this cap on the top and see about removing that. Pretty common for these studs to unscrew with the nut still on. Not a big deal if that happens. We'll show you how to take care of that. These usually come right out because they're in the oil reservoir area and they're constantly submerged in oil. So, like I said, this comes right out. Now, normally when we're doing a rebuild, we just throw these to the side. But I'll show you how we get them off here. We just grab ourselves our small 10-inch aluminum pipe wrench, put our stud in there in the center, grab a 1/2-inch wrench, put that on there, and back the nuts off. And we throw the nuts away because we don't reuse them. It'd be okay for you to reuse them, but we don't reuse them. In my opinion, for a long time, in a torque situation where you're torquing a fastener to a specific foot-pound or inch-pound, that you don't reuse a nylite or a nylock nut. I'm getting ahead of myself with the word nylite. This one here's a little. All right. Remember the nylite washers we discussed that held the motor plate on? Well, underneath these top nuts, same thing, nylite washer. What that does is it crushes under the nut and it makes a good seal so that no water gets in the top of these units. Many, many times these things come in and there's no nylite washers under the top cap, which right away I know a do-it-yourselfer did it. And there's nothing wrong with a do-it-yourselfer doing it, which is why we're making this video. It's just that you need to do it right. So, many of our customers are actually mechanics, you know, and I'm a firm believer in just because you're a mechanic doesn't mean you can fix anything. I had a mechanic come in here, just a quick story, I had a mechanic come in here, he wanted to buy a $500 part because he was having an issue with his E60 unit. And what he had was a two-terminal, two-lug motor. And when you install a two-lug motor on this E60, you're supposed to run a jumper wire off the ground, another battery cable that goes from the ground on the motor back to this ground on the base. Because what will happen is you'll have the motor grounded, but like we were talking about with that corrosion that builds up in between the plate and the base of the motor, the base will lose its ground. So your valves won't open and close.